Awede, welcome to Born Extinct, my journey to acknowledgement of my ancestors and authentic spiritual self. My name is Outeniqua, and I was born extinct. The ancestral Kraal of the Outeniqua, the people who are known as the keepers of the knowledge of the bee, was arguably one of the most beautiful places in the world before colonization. The Outeniqua Kraal, with approximately 100 smaller kraals inside the Kraal, was completely destroyed by the invader settler. The Outeniqua sat in the spectacular area and stretches from the Tsitsikamma forest to the Storms River. The Outeniqua people lived in this forest kraal called the Kraal, nowadays called the Garden Route, a kraal which smaller kraals' names were also changed and is now known as Plettenberg Bay, Neisner, Little Brak River, Pakkalsdorp, Great Brak River, Wilderness, Sedgefield, Nature's Valley, and George, and it borders the Tsitsikamma and the Storms River. The Kraal is where the dwelling of the Wolfstam is normally located. Within this kraal, the smaller villages, one can imagine it being much like a city like Johannesburg, with suburbs like Sandton, Rosebank, Roodepoort, Kensington. So, cities are not new to Africa or Aboriginal people. Within these various kraals, different goods were produced to either be sold and traded or bartered internally or externally. For the settler arriving in this pristine beauty, it may have looked disorganized because in Europe they have destroyed all their forests already. The settler who came from a chaotic, war-torn, dense Europe, they couldn't understand why such a huge space was inhabited by so few people. This spectacular stretch of coastline where ancient forests, rivers, wetlands, dunes, mountains, and the indigenous fynbos meet formed what could only be described as paradise until the settler arrived with his destructive ways. Climatically, the Outeniqua and the Tsitsikamma indigenous forests are moderate in summer and chilly in winter, with perfect rainy conditions for the now virtually extinct herd of elephants, leopards, bush pigs, several hundred species of birds, and an abundance of indigenous trees. The mountains catch the rain clouds from the sea and fill the streams, and rivers provide water to the forests. The flowers of the Outeniqua Mountains are fynbos, and 6,800 species of plants used to survive there. There are continued attempts to erase the people and their history of the Outeniqua, but it becomes more and more difficult as they themselves run out of space, because the European settler had decided that the whole of the Outeniqua and the Tsitsikamma should be holiday resorts for Europeans. Although the Outeniqua, the keeper of the knowledge of the bee, their lives were destroyed by the brutality and greed of the Dutch and British settler who took their land for timbering, hunted their animals into extinction for sport and ivory, they continue to practice their culture, albeit secretly. The Outeniqua nation have been living in harmony in their natural environment with their animals, birds, swarms of butterflies and honeybees for millennia. Man laden with honey, men who carry honey, men loaded with honey, people who live in harmony with honeybees and people with honey is what they've called themselves for centuries. Colonial anthropologists, travelers, and historians have described the Outeniquas as slopes of evergreen mountains covered with heather and swarming with bees and butterflies. The 18th century traveler Francois Le Valliant wrote about swarms of bees he saw and the variety of fynbos they fed on. He wrote about the almost extinction of the bee due to settler greed and reported that nature had made an enchanting abode of this beautiful place. Trees and bird life included stinkhout, kalander, kershout, hardpear, white pear, geelhout, assagai, and the pink Cape chestnut. The niceness, colorful lory, wood owl, Cape eagle owl, and crowned eagle fled when the settler invaded their territory. Where previously koi used only the tracks made by elephants, Hieronymus Cruz hacked his way through and penetrated the dense forest of the Outeniqua in 1668. The greatest forest in southern Africa was invaded by the settler in 1711, but due to its inaccessibility, it could not be immediately exploited. It was only in 1777 that the Dutch colonizer established a woodcutter's post called a buitepos, where George is today, and the destruction of the forest began in earnest. A beacon was erected to deter the British from staking a claim in Outeniqua land. George was established as a timber industry due to its importance to the settler, who placed it important because of the various types of wood unavailable in their mother continent. By 1772, the settler had exhausted all the forests near Cape Town, and there was a steady influx of settlers starting industrial exploitation in the Kraal, which is the garden route, creating unimaginable wealth and irreparable damage to the fauna and flora around George. In 1796, 11 woodcutters, blacksmiths, wagon makers, 200 oxen, mostly stolen, and many families arrived in the area. The destruction of these forests that drove the koi and their animals further and further into the mountain led to the wagon making and furniture industry for the export market. Timber for Europe was transported via ox wagon, destroying huge tracts of forest. British and Italian migrants were brought to the area from 1779 with the intention of starting a silk industry in the area. Mulberry trees were being destroyed by the very settler themselves, and these new settlers found themselves stranded and forced to move deeper appropriating, killing and maiming into the forest, grabbing land willy-nilly and joining the already looting timber community. After the second British occupation of 1806, George was declared a district and was named after reigning British monarch, King George III. The town George in the Garden Route is the sixth oldest town in the country. By 1910, several sawmills had been established in the area. Modern wood technologies and innovative furniture factories employing Khoi slaves and indentured people manufactured huge amounts of furniture for export to their European motherland. Honey production using the Outeniqua skills has populated the area without recognition, given the original and survivors, inhabitants, no royalties, no space, no respect, no dignity. In the 19th century, the improvement of their telecommunications, the establishment of their railway lines and roads, and coastal locomotive trains resulted in unprecedented wealth for the settler, which is still glaringly visible in what they call the Garden Route today. European forest settlements like Bergplaats, which was established in 1922, and people from the Witwatersrand was repatriated to work on the stolen farms. Before the British settler could understand the harmonic and easy way the indigenous Outeniqua farmed their bees and farmed their trees and their animals, they had cannibalized everything and destroyed most of the hives, most of the forest, all the animals. Kaigagangs for your time, Cape of Storms, Table Bay, Falls Bay, Cape of Good Hope, settler, it was not yours to take. I am Ataqua, and I was born extinct.